to another episode of Tap Outs and Touchdowns.
This has been a fun start to the day. What's up, everybody? It's your guy, Bully Rye, and you're listening to another football episode of Tap Outs and Touchdowns. As always, alongside me for the football shows is Banker Bill. Bill, what's going on, man? We're a couple minutes late to the show, but it's okay. Anybody who's listening to the show after the fact is never going to know.
Yeah.
What's going on, man?
Scrambling, man. Scrambling. You already know that. It's a good day. It's a good day. But I came up here to do the podcast like I do every single week. Come find out my daughter stole the microphone I normally use. It is hers. Side note. It is hers. But, yeah, she came up and took the microphone that I use and called you and had to scramble to figure something out. So here we are. Probably sound a little different.
Yeah, it's just for the night, right? Like, it's not like we're, it's going to be like this all the time.
Yeah,
and, especially now that now that you know that you don't have the microphone, like, hey, that's something I got to do this weekend, I mean, her birthday is coming up this weekend, so I'm sure I've got something like a small thing for her in the other room. So he's like, hey, it's your birthday, but I want a microphone. Get it back.
Yeah.
Do the opposite for the birthday for her. So yeah, welcome everybody to the show, whether you're listening on Facebook, YouTube, or X. Leave a comment wherever you're watching to join the conversation. Little surprise. I'm not sure if you call it a surprise or not. Next week, we are going to go live on my Instagram account at Ryan W. Frick. It's across the bottom of the screen if you're watching the show live with us now. So one of those platforms that we're live on tonight will not be live next week. I'm probably going to take it off X next week. Because we got Volley Polly that always comes in and watches it on YouTube, and I believe he might be in here now. But we're going to try Instagram Live. We got a lot of reaction from a reel that we made from this show a couple of weeks ago on Instagram. So I'm going to give it a shot. It won't be able to stay live. Like, you'll be able to watch the show later on Instagram Live, but maybe we'll see if it gets more foot traffic over there. So be on the lookout for that. If you already aren't, make sure you go follow me on Instagram at Ryan W. Frick on Instagram. And as Volley Polly says, you say his name like Beetlejuice, he appears. He's going to go check out the Instagram as well. Bill, we got some football talk to get to this evening, this morning, wherever it is that you're listening to the show. And in order to start off the show the right way, we're going to start off with Homer's Corner. And there's a topic that I want to talk about very briefly, and that has to do with Marvin Harrison Jr. I was the guy who sort of like doo-dooed on him into going into the NFL draft thinking that he wasn't the greatest. Like, I don't think he's going to be that next big wide receiver. Like, I'm the one that got cute and had him going as the second wide receiver drafted in my mock draft. But there's a report that went out last week that he declines to sign the NFLPA licensing deal as leverage for a new Fanatics deal. This is according to Yahoo Sports. 8 nights ago, Cardinals receiver Marvin Harrison held a jersey with his name on it, but no one can buy a jersey with his name on it since he hasn't signed that agreement with the NFLPA. He has an existing deal with Fanatics, who is the distributor of NFL players' jerseys. And per the report that was acquired by Yahoo Sports, Harrison signed the contract with Fanatics before the 2023 season. The deal is worth more than $1 million, and it covers autographs, signed trading cards, game-worn apparel, and other marketing opportunities. The other person infamously who did not sign a deal with the NFLPA licensing deal was former NFL linebacker LeVar Arrington, which is one of the most prominent examples, again, according to Yahoo Sports, as evidence in his chronic absence from the Madden game. Last week, Barry Sanders also decided to pull his name from that licensing deal. So starting in the 2025 edition of Madden, you will not be able to find Barry Sanders for part of your Ultimate Team. I believe the Manning brothers have also not signed that or also a part of that deal because you don't see them in Ultimate Team anymore either. Bill, what do you make of this? Like, do you think, like, we see, retired players, like legends of the game who refuse to sign this, but what do you make of Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in and refusing to sort of like play ball and be a part of what everybody else is in the NFL?
It's about money, right? We're talking about money again. I guess this is why he's choosing to do this. I'm not really understanding what is his motivation for this. Did they explain what he's like? What are they actually trying to accomplish?
That's a good question. Tim Costello in the chat, does it have anything to do with him not being able to wear 88? No, he has already come out and said that he is wearing 18 for the Arizona Cardinals. So he's established his jersey number in Arizona. I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that he can't wear 88. I don't know. It says, according to the Yahoo report, that the motivation is so that he can link a new deal with Fanatics. But like, how can you have a deal with Fanatics and not be able to sell your jersey under the NFLPA licensing agreement? I don't know how it works. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I just thought it was interesting to note. Interesting of note, I should say, considering he's a rookie who's got a jersey number. I don't know if he's actually signed his rookie contract with the Cardinals yet, but doesn't appear to be any closer to signing that agreement, which means that when the next Madden comes out, Marvin Harrison Jr. may not be on it. And the majority of people who enjoy playing Madden like playing with the realistic teams. And if you've got a player of the caliber Marvin Harrison Jr., it's not like Madden's going to just create like generic receiver 18 with stats and stuff. So all you got to do is plug his name in. I don't know. It'll be interesting how it plays out. That's my Homer's Corner. Bill, you have some more kind of exciting news for you in way of the Miami Dolphins signing a big name wide receiver. So take it away with your Homer's Corner for tonight.
I'm just pretty excited about it. That's all. Odell Beckham Jr. signs with the Miami Dolphins. I feel like 6 years ago, I'd have probably come unglued and ran around and maybe gotten streaking in the neighborhood for that kind of signing for Odell Beckham Jr., but he's quite a bit older now. But I still think he has speed. I looked at his career stats. He really hasn't had a year I think 2018 was like his last good season. It's been a while. A lot of injuries for Odell Beckham Jr., but I'm still really excited. He did lead the Baltimore Ravens last season in yards per reception and was third on the team in receiving. So Zay Flowers had a really good season. Obviously, Mark Edwards was their second best receiving option, even though he missed some of the year with an injury. But Odell obviously getting injured every once in a while. Kind of an injury-prone player, but I think I'm really excited how he's going to drop into that offense down there in Miami. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham Jr. I mean, that sounds terrifying. Obviously, Tyreek's older, getting older. Odell's older. Who knows? But I just the options, man. I've crapped on Lamar Jackson on this show about how he can't throw the football. I'm not really excited ever about him. I feel like Tua is a better passing quarterback than Lamar Jackson. And to put Odell on that team, it's only a $3 million deal with 5.25 in incentives. He actually took less money to go play with the Dolphins than he got offered somewhere else. Man, I'm just excited. I cannot wait. With all the little offensive weapons that we've added this offseason, with the new rookie running back, with Odell Beckham Jr., I'm just excited, man. It's going to be fun.
Your Uncle Gary shares my sentiment that he's a cancer.
I'm not sure. He wasn't last year. He wasn't that with the Rams, and he wasn't that last year. Actually, he looked like a team player with the Rams. He hasn't been a cancer since he played for the Giants. He was kind of when he played for the Browns. He had one good season there, and then injuries happened. And really, since his injuries happened, I haven't heard him being any kind of a jerk. He was a jerk with the Giants because he was that team's best player. I mean, that's bottom line. But I don't know. I think he's getting older. I think he's more mature. I'm hoping anyway. I think it's going to be fun.
Tim goes back in the chat. OBJ isn't going to try to steal the show. Listen,
how can you? You got one of the top three receivers in the NFL playing down there.
Yeah, you mentioned Tyreek Hill getting older. I don't think he's slowed down.
No.
When it comes to players slowing down, injuries do that, and I think this happened to Odell Beckham Jr. Listen, you're excited about it. I'm happy that you're excited about it. But I can't say for certain that I share your optimism. Not that they have better receivers on that team, outside of those three. I don't know who you'd plug in instead of Odell. But I just feel like the Dolphins have put together an offensive playmaker room that's sort of like plug and play. If somebody gets hurt, somebody else can step up and be that next guy. I just don't know if Odell at this point in his career can do it. So
they didn't really have a third. They didn't have a third last season. So I'm excited what their third was either Braxton Berrios or River Craycraft because they just really didn't have much down there. They had what was his name, number 11, and he was not that great.
The guy from Pittsburgh, is that you're talking about?
No, he had originally come from the
he's...
Cowboys. He'd been there for a few seasons, and I already forgot who he was. That's how good he was last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, there you go. Well, we're talking wide receivers here, and it's a good segue into something that you sent me a little while ago. Pro Football Network has released their top 10 wide receivers ahead of the 2024-2025 season, and about what you'd expect with one name thrown in there that I couldn't have disagreed with more. But if you look at this top 10, you've got the usual suspects, right? Justin Jefferson at 1, Tyreek Hill at 2, CeeDee Lamb at 3, Devontae Adams at 4, Jamar Chase 5. I don't know if you can put Jamar Chase all the way down at 5 if he's got a healthy Joe Burrow for an entire season. Bill, how do you feel about the top 5 of this list?
The only one I don't feel like I agree with maybe is CeeDee Lamb.
Bingo.
I'm not loving that one. I don't know. I feel like Jamar Chase is up there. Like you said, Joe Burrow had a lot of injury issues last season. He didn't have quite the year. Devontae Adams was dominant 2 years ago and had no quarterback play last year, 0, and still had a decent season. I don't love CeeDee Lamb. I don't know why. He had a great season last year, though. I just don't know if he's one of the top 5 wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, I listen. I might put him on that cusp at 6. Depending on what argument you want to make. I think the fact that you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, if we go through 6 through 10, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown down at 7. And of course, I'm going to put my homer hat on like I'm wearing right now. Mm-hmm. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown at this point is a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Maybe drop CeeDee Lamb out. I don't think you can drop Jamar Chase.
I think AJ Brown. AJ Brown's there at 6. I like AJ Brown. I would take AJ Brown over CeeDee Lamb.
I think I would too.
If I was building a team, yeah.
Yeah, so if you look at 6 through 10, AJ Brown's at 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown is at 7, Brandon Ayuk at 8, Stephon Diggs at 9, and Deebo Samuel at 10. Brandon Ayuk isn't the best wide receiver on his team, and he somehow ranks above him in this list. That's the one I vehemently disagree with. I don't care what platform, what network, what website that you host, whatever the case is. I don't care who you are. If you have Brandon Ayuk first of all, in your top 10 wide receivers in the NFL, and even more so have him in over guys like Stephon Diggs and Deebo Samuel,
yeah,
my opinion, you kind of lose some credibility. Would you agree, Bill?
He had a great season. Ayuk had a great season, but do I think he's better than Deebo? He might be better than Stephon Diggs because Ayuk's on his way up. I think Diggs is on his way down. So if you're going to say that he passed him this year, then fine. Or going into this year, whatever. I think that's fine. I don't think he's better than Deebo. If you're going to pick one of those two guys to put on your football team, if you're starting your football team right now and you're going to pick Ayuk or Samuel, I think you're picking Samuel. But Diggs, I could see.
Yeah.
Other than that, the list is pretty good. But there's something I find really odd about this list, Ryan. Maybe just odd about the NFL. There's one team in the NFL that got 2 wide receivers on this top 10 list, according to Pro Football Network, right? And it is the San Francisco 49ers. Do you remember what the San Francisco 49ers picked in the first round of the draft?
I believe they drafted a wide receiver.
They drafted a wide receiver. They are the only team to have 2 players ranked in the top 10 in that position, and they drafted it in the first round. To me, that makes 0 sense.
Sean McElveen in the chat says Jefferson is number 1 because Cousins could find him. He'll drop to like 3rd if McCarthy and him don't connect. Hashtag my
That's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Talent-wise, I think he's up there. I think if you look at this list, I would jump Amon-Ra St. Brown into the top 5. I would pull CeeDee Lamb out. I would probably rank it Jefferson, Hill, Chase, Amon-Ra, and Adams, only because we didn't really get to see what Adams could do once he left Green Bay. I mean, he was a top 3 receiver when he was playing with Aaron Rodgers, and now the Raiders didn't go for a quarterback in this draft. So I don't care who they throw out there. There's not going to be Aaron Rodgers as much as
stash. They got the stash.
Well, nevertheless, yeah. And then going back to Brandon Ayuk, I could think of I could probably think a handful of receivers in the league that I would rank above Brandon Ayuk, not just Deebo Samuel. I mean, again, you could argue the fact that maybe he passed Diggs, but like, how is Mike Evans not on this list? Mike Evans he has never caught fewer than 1,000 yards in a season.
Right.
But they have Brandon Ayuk is number 8 and Mike Evans not in the top 10. I mean, you talk about a team having 2 receivers on this list. You could have that in Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans.
Yeah. Well, I've got another one for you. And I feel like I would pick this player over Brandon Ayuk if I was starting team tomorrow. DK Metcalf in Seattle. That dude terrifies me.
DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett.
I don't know about Lockett, but DK Metcalf, yes.
A couple years ago, you could throw Lockett in that conversation.
Yeah,
I mean,
not now.
Dude got
this is now. We're talking about now. Let's say now.
Yeah.
When I say DK Metcalf is a better receiver, a scarier receiver than Brandon Ayuk.
I mean, we could spend some time and go through all the different receiver combos in the league. But like, yeah, this list loses credibility. Like the Pro Football Network, whatever this is, has lost credibility with me by putting Ayuk in the top 10 over Deebo Samuel, over Mike Evans. And I'll tell you what, it's going to transition because they also put a list of their post-draft power rankings, post-NFL draft prior to the 2024-2025 NFL season. And what little credibility they had before, they've lost all with this list.
I love it. Bully Rye coming out.
Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, fine. They won the Super Bowl. They're not losing a whole lot. I get it. Number 2, San Francisco 49ers. They were the NFC champions. They beat the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game. I got no problem with it. 3, the Baltimore Ravens. Now, you can argue that Baltimore was the best team in the AFC last season and just absolutely crapped it up in the playoffs because they decided that we weren't going to let Lamar Jackson run the football, which is what he does best. But if you want to put them at 3 because of what they did, maybe in the drafts, in the offseason, and what they were able to do in last season, okay, I get it. Detroit Lions at 4, I'm fine with. I think you could arguably put them above the Baltimore Ravens, considering what they've done in the offseason, going out and getting DJ Reader, getting 2 of the top 10 corners in the draft, securing both Penei Sewell and Amon-Ra St. Brown for their future. So I could argue that you could plug them in at 3, but they're at 4. Bill, here's where they lose me. Here is where they lose me.
I knew this is where it was.
I'm debating dropping the F-bomb on this show for the first time since you and I have been doing it because of how outrageous this is. They have the Houston Texans, Bill. The Houston Texans at 5. Ahead of teams like the Eagles, the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, who are all in this top 10. Bill, rationalize why they would put the Houston Texans in the top 5.
Oh, you want me to argue this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. CJ Stroud had a fantastic year as a rookie. That he had some injuries to his wide receivers. They have put Stephon Diggs on the team. Everybody feels really good about their coach, and everybody feels like they had a pretty decent draft. So logic would say that the Texans are probably on the upswing, and they were pretty darn good and scary last season. I feel like the Packers were in that group too, and they're underneath the Texans. I don't know how you put the Bengals below the Texans. I don't know, because I think if Joe Burrow is healthy, they're one of the top, at least top 5, maybe top 3 teams that they can handle the Ravens. I think they could beat the Ravens on a good day. Of course, I'm not a homer like you are. I don't say, oh, the Dolphins should be 4. I'm not going to do that. But yeah,
I mean, they're not.
I think, yeah. So. I don't think they've gotten that much worse. I mean, the only person that I think we feel like we've lost is Wilkins, but I don't understand where the Texans. People are very excited about that team. I think they're very excited about that team.
Real quick, Mike Tackett's got a comment in the chat. I'll read your comment here in a second because we're getting to that here shortly about the UFL and the TV ratings. But yeah, so if you look down this list, after the Texans at 5, you've got the Packers at 6, the Eagles at 7, Bengals at 8, and Dolphins at 9, and the Dallas Cowboys at 10. You lost me at Brandon Ayuk as the number 8 best receiver in the NFL, and then you lose me even more. Like if I was on the board of trustees for Pro Football Network, or if I was on the commissionership of this, whatever you want to call it, I'm finding out who's voted for these teams and these power rankings, and I'm having a sit down conversation with them and telling them, listen, you need to leave the weed at home. Okay, you don't bring the weed to work with you.
Yeah.
If you're drinking, wait for after hours to be drinking, and don't put these lists together while you're drinking. Sean McElveen says they're giving the Texas credit for being the least competitive division in football. You're absolutely right. The AFC South is the worst division in. Okay, the NFC South gives them a strong number one. The AFC is pretty. The AFC South is pretty close. Now those teams should be better this year with Anthony Richardson coming back for the Colts, which pains me to say because of how much we crapped on them last year. With you would think the Jaguars getting better. So listen, I don't know. The fact of the matter is, you cannot put the Houston Texans after one season with CJ Stroud. There's the pieces that added Tank Dell. I believe one of the receivers got shot recently, not to mention the injury that they had at the end of the season. Listen, I don't agree with putting Green Bay in the top 10 either, for that matter. But they had a decent season last year. They had an okay draft.
I like Green Bay.
I know you did last year too. And I'm glad that Green Bay was the team to go out and get Marshawn Lloyd out of Southern Cal, the other USC, because he has a problem holding on to the football, and he's a giant diva. And so if there's one division that can take Marshawn Lloyd and watch him turn into the bust that he will be, I'm glad it's the Green Bay Packers. But like Philadelphia, I know they fizzled out towards the end of the season, but they're still a year removed from being in the Super Bowl. Like, they were still the last undefeated NFC team in the NFL last year.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put the Texans above Philly. A healthy Joe Burrow, you can't put him above the Bengals. I still don't think you can put him above the Dolphins. I still think you got to. I would contemplate moving the Dolphins into the top 5 in this list. I think the Dolphins are better. They just got stuck playing in Kansas City where like 10 people had to get their arms cut off because they played in a game that was too cold.
It's more like 15, but close.
The Dallas Cowboys it's really hard to argue for the Dallas Cowboys, considering that they are perennial and absolute annual chokers when it comes to the postseason. Like, you can't have the Cowboys in the postseason without them losing the game, out the stretch. So, but yeah, listen, all due respect to pro football.
His Lions are finally successful, and he's talking about everybody else being bad. I love it.
Listen, I'll say it again with all due respect. This list ain't worth a velvet painting of a whale and a dolphin getting it on. And if you understand that reference, then kudos to you. Appreciate it. You can leave a comment to let me know where you got the reference from. It should be one of your favorite movies because it's a racing movie that I got that from. So
I think I know.
Yeah.
I think I know.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and say it. Nobody said it in the comments yet. What movie is that from, Bill?
I think it's Talladega Nights, isn't it?
That is Talladega Nights.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, with all due respect, Pro Football Network, I'm not going to seek them out to get their rankings about things going forward. Listen, the last bit of news before we get into the UFL Week 6 comes from the NFL, but it has to do with the UFL. I believe if he wasn't the XFL MVP last year, he was up there because he was the passing leader for the Seattle Sea Dragons, and he was signed to the Denver Broncos until today. Shout out to Volley Polly, who sent me this link prior to the show and said, "Hey, can y'all fit this in?" And of course, because we are men of the people. If there's something you'd like to see us talk about on the show, we will bring it to you. We did it with the wrestling shows, and we'll do it with the football shows. But former Seattle Sea Dragons quarterback Ben DiNucci was released by the Denver Broncos today, which, for all intents and purposes, should make him eligible to go sign with the UFL team now. Bill, Volley Polly mentioned that Dormady might be able to sit back seat to Ben DiNucci.
Don't hurt my feelings.
Well, do you see a team where Ben DiNucci can fit on and make an impact as we head towards the UFL playoffs?
Yeah, I like him in San Antonio. That's not a bad idea. Dormady has been pretty bad. I didn't want him to be, but he is. There's other than maybe Arlington. Well, obviously the good teams, Birmingham, St. Louis. We can argue that Michigan doesn't really. I mean, I think pretty much everybody, but not named Birmingham and St. Louis and Arlington, don't need quarterbacks or do need quarterbacks in the UFL. Sorry. Actually, you know what's funny? I did a lot. I was looking at a lot of offensive stats, and
I think we're getting a
UFL,
little internet connection issue with Bill.
there are a little bit of lag here. Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit of
a little
lag.
bit of
There you
lag,
go.
but no, I think he could help a lot of these teams. A lot of these teams. He was a very good player last season in the XFL for Seattle, and there are a lot of non Ben DiNucci quarterbacks in the UFL this season.
Well, I'll be
I
interested
think
to
he'd be pretty good.
see as one of the better quarterbacks in the XFL last season. I'd love to see him come into the UFL. And that brings us to UFL Week 6. It has come and gone. We are over halfway through the season, and we officially have our first playoff-bound team in the UFL. Before we get to the games, let's look at the TV ratings, because a comment that was left earlier by Mike Tackett talked about the UFL ratings continue to go up each week. Are we okay with empty seats as long as the advertisers are happy? And will the teams have owners help? Having owners help too. Listen, the problem with the UFL is that they don't have owners for individual teams. They're all owned by, that group that consists of Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Danny Garcia.
And the networks.
So and the networks. So listen, that's the $1 million question that everybody's had, is that we're seeing a bunch of stadiums out not named St. Louis, not named DC, that aren't really being able to fill their stands. But people are watching the shows. If you look at Week 6 in the UFL TV ratings, Birmingham Memphis, the first game of the weekend, got almost 1 million viewers at 956. But if you look at that San Antonio DC game on Sunday, over 1.2 million people tuned in to watch a game of the XFL division where neither of the teams were at the top. St. Louis is at the top of the XFL division within the UFL. So, but yeah, they averaged over 900,000 viewers for the entire week, and the lowest rating game was, I believe, Houston St. Louis, which, if you think about it, Houston's one of the worst teams in the league. So, I mean, Bill, to kind of coin that question, do you think that we're fine at seeing empty seats as long as the people are watching the games on TV?
Well, I've tried to explain this. I belong to a number of fan groups on Facebook for the UFL, people talking about this, and a lot of people like to bring up this question. I've tried to explain to them that the seats don't matter for anything other than seeing people in the seats is probably fun for the people watching the game on television, right? You want to have a crowd. The crowd being loud is fun for the viewers. The networks do not care. They do not care. That does not mean anything to them. Putting people in the seats means nothing but to the owners of the venues. The venues, the UFL is renting the venues from owners that want to see people in the seats because they make the ticket gate. The UFL doesn't care. They just want you to keep watching on TV because that's where their money's coming from. So watching these numbers go up this week, they had been slowly tailing off week after week. This week they shot up to go up over 1 million again. Like you said, that late Sunday game, San Antonio, DC, and then having almost 1 million for the game prior to that, and then 1 million for the early Saturday game when everybody should have been watching or could have been watching the Kentucky Derby broadcast. Like, that was on, I think, FS1 for a while, and then they had it on one of their lower level channels, but there was other stuff to watch, and here people were watching the UFL. I think that's awesome. It's up so much higher than it was last season. I think it's like 41% over what the XFL and USFL combined was. So you're seeing numbers really go up. I can't imagine, especially with the rankings we gave a couple weeks ago, Ryan, where it was stacked against the other major sports, and the UFL was sitting 5th, and their ratings have gone up since then. And you've got Stanley Cup playoffs happening right now. You got the NBA playoffs happening right now. That was all before that, so those have probably gone up. But these are really, really nice numbers for a spring minor football league.
Yeah, to Bill's point, like, it doesn't matter if there's not people in the seats as long as people are watching on TV, because that's what the advertisers care about.
Yeah, it means nothing for revenue.
There was a game earlier the year we talked about numerous times where the Carolina Panthers couldn't give the tickets away. They were going on sale for a nickel, and people still weren't going to the game. Now, granted, the weather was bad and the Panthers were worse, but the idea is that there are going to be games where people don't show up. It's a matter of, you talk about ticket gate, it's also about concessions. It's about keeping people employed. Now, if they can find a way to find markets where people can show up, it's going to be better. We just talked about Ben DiNucci in Seattle. Seattle put together decent crowds at times last season. But you're starting to see crowds like in Michigan that started off over 10,000 at the beginning of the season. They start to dwindle primarily because it was like oversaturation because they had 4 straight home games to start the year.
Yeah.
They have 1 away game and then they go back to Michigan this past weekend. So, listen, there's logistics that need to be discussed going into next season. We talked about this, I believe, last week or the week before. They threw this league together because they merged late in 2023 and then had to launch the league. So I still think there's a chance that they move one of the 3 teams out of Texas to put maybe back into Seattle. There's markets that could host the team. But I don't know logistically how it works. So we'll have to stay tuned and see that. But as far as the actual gameplay goes, again, we mentioned 4 more games taking place, and your Birmingham Stallions get the 39-21 win. They are improved to 6-0 over the Memphis Showboats. Volley Polly also said that we could give it to him because he's a Memphis Showboats adopted fan, and we could really take a giant caca on those Showboats tonight. But Birmingham, with this win, becomes the first team in the UFL this season to secure a playoff spot. Bill, let's talk about the Birmingham Stallions because Adrian Martinez got the 2nd consecutive start. It's the first time that one quarterback has started in consecutive starts, I believe, since Matt Corral did it earlier in the season. And he goes off 369 yards, 4 touchdowns in this game. I believe they led almost start to finish. They get a new leading receiver in this game, and Kevin Austin, a wide receiver out of Notre Dame, who had 108 yards and a score. I mean, I don't know what much more we can say about Birmingham. Birmingham is the team to beat in the UFL right now, correct?
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even. Do you want to talk about statistics just for a moment? Well, while we were talking about Birmingham, because Birmingham is what I like to call disgusting when it comes to every other team. Birmingham is currently putting up massive yard numbers, massive yardage totals. Okay, so Birmingham averages 383.8 yards per game, which is a huge number, even for NFL statistics. I mean, that's a really nice number, right? Number 2 is Arlington. Figure that one out. Yeah. Arlington's number 2.
Arlington Renegades, yeah.
They're putting up 293, so 90 less yards per game from first to second place. The whole rest of the league is putting up only 73 yards. All of them are in a group. The worst team in the league is putting up 73 yards worse than Arlington. So Birmingham is more than double better than the gap from 2 to 8, the gap from 1 to 2. It's 383, 293, and the worst team in the league is Memphis, which we saw them just get stomped out by Birmingham. They only put up 220. 160 yards a game less. I mean, Birmingham is so much better than the rest of the league. It is crazy right now. They're good at that. The other bad news, Ryan, is they're also really good at defense. That's really, really bad news for the rest of the league. I don't know. I honestly can't figure out how anybody's going to beat Birmingham this year, let alone win the championship, other than the team out of the Stallions. It's unbelievable. They're so good.
They get the game of the weekend this week. We're going to talk about here in a few minutes. But it was the same thing last year in the USFL. Birmingham was rolling. They were off to a start, and then they dropped a couple games, but still ended up winning the USFL championship. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can go undefeated and take that 10-0 record into the playoffs. You talked about Memphis, and we talked about Ben DiNucci a minute ago.
They're terrible.
I think Memphis could use a quarterback. It's sitting at 1-5. They played both quarterbacks this weekend. Honestly, I missed this game, so I saw both quarterbacks.
You didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything.
It didn't look like it did.
No.
But you got Troy Williams went through for 65 yards and a touchdown. Case Cookus went for 115 yards and a touchdown. So they combined, quick math, for 180 yards passing in this game. Darius Victor, their leading rusher, had 42 yards on the ground, 3.8 a carry. Defense only got 1 sack, forced no turnovers at Birmingham. Listen, we talked about Memphis possibly being the worst team in the league, but you still got, despite their offensive firepower, you've still got Arlington sitting at winless. You've got, I've got the standings here we're going to talk about before the end of the show here. You've got, let's see, Arlington is 0-6. Memphis is 1-5. Houston is 1-5. But they're definitely in play to be one of the worst teams in the UFL.
The Memphis Showboats are the worst team yards per game on offense and the worst team yards per game on defense. They are the worst team, even though they've won a game, which they shouldn't have, probably. They are by far the worst team on both sides of the ball. Arlington is actually an anomaly. They make no sense. They actually have the fifth best defense. That's also the fourth worst. I mean, the way that it works, right? So fifth best defense, and we talked about it. They have a pretty good offense. So it makes zero sense how bad Arlington is.
Well, we're going to talk about Arlington here because they had the last game on the docket this weekend. Next up on the Saturday slate, the Houston Roughnecks take another L to the St. Louis Battlehawks. Houston falls to 1-5, also tied, I guess, at the bottom of the USFL division. Your Florida boy, Mark Thompson, found the end zone despite having 3.5 yards per carry. He had 45 yards on 13 carries. Reed Sinnett doing more Reed Sinnett things, only 135 yards through the air. Not a whole lot getting done on offense here in Houston. Defense had 2 sacks and a pick, but the offense did not find the end zone until the fourth quarter. You just talked about the fact that both offensively and defensively, Memphis ranks at the bottom of the league. Where would you put Houston in that, for that matter?
They're terrible. They're just terrible.
All right, that's all we need to say about them.
Total offense, they're 7th in the league. Total defense, let's look at it really quick. Total defense, they're not bad. They're 3rd, but total offense is really bad, and they're just not making it happen. You know, you and I talk about this a lot. The teams that can run the football are pretty decent teams. They are not one of those teams. They don't run the football. So you're not taking any pressure off of Reed Sinnett. It's all on him. He's not good enough to make anything happen. Plus, their offensive line is just awful. I mean, you watch him play, they're under pressure. He's under pressure the entire time. You look at St. Louis. St. Louis has a high-powered offense. They put 45 up against DC 2 weeks ago. They only put up 22 against Houston. So their defense, obviously, in Houston is not too bad, but their offensive line is junk. Their offense can't score.
Well, let's talk about St. Louis for a second here, because you talk about that. We both have argued that the teams that can run the football are generally the teams that win in the UFL, but they didn't run it all that well. Jacob Sailors had 18 yards, 2.3 yards a carry. Wayne Gallman went 3.3 yards a carry, but the 5-1 Battlehawks were led by A.J. McCarron, who had 255 yards to the air with 3 touchdowns. Hakeem Butler having another huge day with 6 catches, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was his second 100-plus yards and 2 touchdown games in the same number of weeks. 2 consecutive games with that stat line. You got Ja'Cour Pearson, another playmaker, 5 catches, 46 yards. They had 1 sack, 2 forced fumbles. They led this game throughout, never relinquished a lead. They only gave up points in the fourth quarter. Again, we talked about big games. We talked about Birmingham. St. Louis sits atop the XFL division. We're going to keep talking about it. We're going to keep mentioning it. We're on a crash course for St. Louis versus Birmingham for the UFL championship. Correct?
Yes. They're the only team. Actually, St. Louis, by the way, Ryan, is fantastic at playing defense. If I remember correctly, it's going to be off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure they only allow about 135 yards per game on defense. It's insane how good they are. Let me just make sure.
They definitely, they only gave up, if you do the math here, you got 45 yards. You got, let's see.
I'm sorry. It's 222 total yards per game that they only give up.
They only gave up 180 to Houston.
Is Birmingham, who gives up 236. The worst team in the UFL is Memphis. They give up an average of 340 yards per game. Pretty bad. Pretty bad.
It's also not great. They don't particularly do well in the fans in the stands category either.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, right? Memphis and Michigan, pretty bad. No, you're definitely looking at St. Louis versus Birmingham right now. I don't see anybody that takes them out. The Ben DiNucci question is really interesting, because I think if San Antonio were to sign him, that immediately puts them in the conversation, because he was so good with Seattle last season. He would be an upgrade, and I hate to say this because I really like Dormady, but he would be an upgrade over Quentin Dormady. And that would make them really fun. Actually, I'm going to root for that to happen. I might email or Twitter or something, is it X, whatever, to see if San Antonio is paying attention, because that should happen. That would make the UFL really fun on the XFL side. But right now, I have no clue how anyone beats either St. Louis or Birmingham coming down the stretch in the playoffs. It'd have to be a surprise like Arlington did last year. But yeah, we're on a crash course, man. That's going to be your championship game.
Well, you speak Arlington into existence. They fall this weekend 28-27. Probably the worst loss of Arlington's season. They're 0-6. They haven't been statistically eliminated from the playoffs, but this weekend they will be. But you mentioned like they're up there, number 2 in offense. Luis Perez, he only had 180 yards through the air. Devion Smith, 55 yards on the ground. Sal Cannella, what's your raw chicken?
Raw chicken.
Was their leading receiver in this game. They had 3 sacks against Michigan. They were in the game throughout. They took a 27-25 lead with less than a minute to go in the fourth quarter, but they allowed a monster kick return that set up the game-winning 42-yard field goal by Michigan. Last year was a miraculous comeback for Arlington to come back and win the XFL, win the XFL championship. We talked about it last season that the best 4 teams did not make the playoffs, and the worst team in the XFL last year was the team that won.
Worst team
to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
won the XFL championship. It's safe to say that's not going to happen with Arlington this year. This is it. This was their last stand, and they gave it up.
I mean, I don't even think this was their last stand. They are a statistical anomaly, Ryan. They have the 3rd best offense in the UFL and the 5th best defense or 4th worst. But it's not where they should be winless. They should not be 0-6. It makes no sense. I think you texted me. They find ways to lose games. And they did it again this week. And Jake Bates.
Well, you mentioned Jake Bates. Let's go ahead and look at Michigan here. 4-2 on the season. Danny Etling gets the next start at quarterback, or once again, 16-28, 202 yards and a touchdown. He also averaged 7.9 yards on the ground per carry. Your leading running back only gets 24 yards on the ground is Matthew Colburn. Easy for me to say. The running back out of Wake Forest via Irmo, South Carolina, finishes 24 yards on the ground. You get a new leading receiver here for Michigan and Marcus Sims, a wide receiver out of West Virginia. You can read the stats going across the bottom line here. But Jake Bates, 7 of 7 kicking the ball, Bill. He had a 55-yarder in the first quarter, a 60-yarder in the second quarter, and as I mentioned, he got the game-winning 42-yard field goal as time expired. I saw somebody mention on social media that they're concerned about leg fatigue with Jake Bates because they want him to sign with an NFL team. He has not missed in Michigan yet. The 2 misses that he had last week were on the road. And so Detroit Lions fans want Jake Bates to stay in the state of Michigan, in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
But like
this guy's going to get paid. He's going to get paid.
21 points. He scored 21 points off of his foot, Bill. Without those 7 field goals, Michigan doesn't win this game.
Is that real? Is that real?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Is this sustainable for Michigan? Like, does Michigan have a shot to make a run? I mean, I say a run in the playoffs. There's only a 2-game playoff here.
No, their best player is the kicker.
I texted you this too. I think Jake Bates, and I don't know how to start this campaign, especially because I don't have like influence. I'm not an influencer yet. You know what I'm saying? Right. I'm just on Instagram. I'm just on Threads. I'm just on X. I would love to start a campaign to make Jake Bates the UFL MVP. I think he would be the 2nd kicker in the history of professional football to win the MVP of a league.
Joining that guy from Washington in the strike here. I forget his name. Yeah.
We need to start this campaign. We need to campaign for Jake Bates as MVP of the UFL. And if it works, maybe we actually go into politics. Maybe we get somebody actually elected to office.
So I guess I missed this. I did watch this game. But he hit another 60-yarder?
Yes.
Good gracious. I did see you were talking about the Lions. Obviously, he's in Michigan, so you want him to stay with, up in Michigan and play in that same field and not miss any kicks for the Lions. But I actually saw on one of the Miami Dolphins fan pages that I also am part of, they talked about Miami signing Jake Bates and saving a bunch of money on their kicker situation because Jason Sanders is expensive. I think they're paying him like $3 million a year. Jake Bates isn't going to command that, but this guy's going to get paid. He will be the first kicker to leave a spring football team as a kicker and end up playing on an NFL team next season. He's unbelievable right now. I can't even believe that we're talking about that because he's standing out so much. We're talking about a kicker, but he's that much of a standout.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So while you were talking, I pulled up the stats from the game again last week. Jake Bates kicked a 55-yarder with 2:05 to go in the first. He then kicked a 43-yarder with 14 seconds to go in the first. As time expired in the second half, in the second quarter, he kicked a 60-yarder. In the third quarter, he kicked a 45 and a 29-yarder. And in the fourth quarter, he kicked a 49 and a 42-yarder. The dude doesn't miss in Michigan. The Michigan magician is Jake Bates. I mean, just it's what a fun story. And again, let's start the campaign Jake Bates for UFL MVP. If you're watching the show, go to wherever you go on social media and just hashtag it. Let's do it. Let's get this going. All right, let's go to the final game of the weekend. We talked about San Antonio potentially needing a quarterback. They dropped their game. I think this was the one upset that I called last weekend, and I really need to go through each episode and go back to our predictions and put them up together. But the DC Defenders go back home, host the San Antonio Brahmas, and get the 18-12 win. You talk about snooze fest. This was not a fun game to watch. But I did predict DC to get the win over San Antonio. But let's start off at San Antonio as they drop to 4-2 and leave the door open for the DC Defenders to try to sneak their way into the playoffs on the XFL division. You talk about Dormady not playing good. That's an understatement. 79 yards passing with a touchdown and a pick. He did have 3 carries for 30 yards, but I digress. We talk again, another anomaly, another sort of contradictory statement. Teams in the UFL that run the football well tend to win games. John Lovett had 23 carries for 153 yards in this game.
Yeah.
6.7 yards per carry. He had a 30-yard run in this game. He did have negative receiving yards, but he found the end zone through the air. But the lack of a passing game, like it's sort of the idea that like you run the ball, you win. But now it's the old adage where you got to have balance.
Yeah, of course.
San Antonio does not have balance.
No, yeah.
Bill, after seeing what you said, obviously we talked about the possibility of Ben DiNucci getting down to San Antonio, but like if they don't, like is San Antonio sort of starting to watch their season slip away?
I think if Quentin Dormady continues to play as poorly as he did this weekend against DC, I mean, we've seen DC play. I want to say DC played decently. Anyway, that sounds ridiculous. They're not terrible. Yeah, they're not terrible. They're not terrible on defense, okay? They're not a bad defensive team. But as far as like passing defense goes, they're not great. They're actually the second worst passing defense in the UFL, giving up 200.7 yards per game. And you watch Quentin Dormady only throw for 79 yards. That's really, 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 really bad. Really bad. And you've got your running back running for 150. You should easily score more than 12 points. And that's all on Dormady. So yeah, are they slipping? Yes. If they sign Ben DiNucci, do they have a shot at winning the UFL title? No, because Birmingham is still going to be better. But I think they could probably challenge St. Louis.
That's fair. I mean, the defense had some playmakers. Jordan Williams, a middle linebacker out of Baylor, had 6 solo tackles in this game. They tied the game with a field goal late in the fourth quarter, but gave up the touchdown and was not able to respond. When you look over the DC side, Jordan Ta'amu looked a little better in this game, almost 200 yards passing. They got a new leading running back. We talk about the fact that they haven't been able to figure it out on the ground in DC, which is why they've struggled so much. Darius Higgins, running back out of Virginia State, not Virginia Tech, not Virginia Christian, Virginia State. I have never heard of this college before.
It's out there. And they play football.
And they play football apparently.
Yeah.
4.8 yards per carry, 63 yards on the ground. Cameron Harris out of Miami, 39 yards on the ground, averaged 4.3 yards per carry. Kelvin Harmon, another stellar performance for him. 8 catches, 101 with a touchdown. Listen, this cornerback that they've got, Michael Joseph, has had a second straight game where he had double-digit tackles, 11 of which were solo. And we already mentioned how they won the game. They scored with just over 5 to play and were able to hold off San Antonio. DC improves to 3-3. Just behind the 4-2 San Antonio Brahmas and 4-2 St. Louis Battlehawks. Or I'm sorry, 5-1 St. Louis Battlehawks. My mistake. Bill, does DC have a shot to really take over from San Antonio? You think it's done for DC as well?
I think San Antonio is a better team than they showed this week. This was a terrible, terrible game by Quentin Dormady. I don't think he's not usually that bad. Hey, that was pretty bad for Dormady. He's not usually, come on. Come on. We saw this guy play against DC. They had to kill. They wanted to kill this guy this year because he cost them their perfect season last year. And yeah, they had it out for this guy. He had a bad game. I think they're better than that. I think San Antonio is better than that. But are they really good? Nah, the statistics really don't show that. They can, however, run the football. So if they can get any quarterback play, Chase Garbers was playing pretty well. Unfortunately, out for the season with the wrist injury. They need some quarterback play. I'm going to bang the drum. I love the idea that I think it was Volley Polly that came up with that one. Ben DiNucci. Go find the guy. Get him playing UFL football.
Well, through 6 weeks of the UFL season, 6 weeks. Did I say that right? I don't even know. Again, words are hard.
6 weeks of the NFL season. I think.
Did I say NFL?
I don't. I wasn't listening.
I honestly don't even know what I'm saying anymore.
You know what I was thinking about? I was thinking if there were any other quarterbacks out there that are better than Quentin Dormady that would play. What happened to the guy? I thought he was on the DC Defenders roster, but he didn't even come in as the backup quarterback. McClendon that played for the Vipers last year.
Oh yeah,
and was pretty good.
He was okay.
Listen, Luis Perez got shipped down the river down to Arlington because McClendon was out playing him.
Was it Jalen McClendon? I don't know. Either way, I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, McClendon's the right last name.
Where is he at?
That's a good question. If you look at let's go to the standings here. St. Louis leads the XFL division 5-1, followed behind. Jesus, words are hard. Following behind them are the San Antonio Brahmas at 4-2. We talked about DC at 3-3, and Arlington, the final winless team, still in the UFL at 0-6. The USFL we've talked about. Birmingham sits at 6-0. Michigan at 4-2. They've almost got it locked up because both Memphis and Houston sit at the bottom at 1-5. If I'm not mistaken, I think if Michigan gets a win this weekend, they may shore up their spot against Birmingham in the USFL championship game. But there's still some work to be done in the XFL with DC. If Arlington can't get any quarterback play, and DC is able to sneak back up and steal that division championship game appearance from them, it'll be fun to watch. And it starts this weekend as the worst game of the weekend kicks us off. Saturday, 1:00 kickoff over on ESPN as the Memphis Showboats take on the Arlington Renegades. And we talked about the fact that Arlington is inexplicably 0-6, and they are 3-point home favorites to the 1-win Memphis Showboats. Bill, I'm gonna start us off here. Give me Arlington, man. I think they finally do it.
I do too.
A little too late, but I think they take out Memphis.
I do too. Memphis is statistically horrific, horrible. Give me another synonym. Embarrassing. That's
terrible. Terrible.
Terrible.
As Charles Barkley would say.
They're terrible. They're the worst at everything. They're the worst at defense. They're the worst on offense. It would make zero sense if Arlington, who is not the worst at everything, has actually got a pretty good offense and an okay defense. It would make no sense that Arlington would lose this game at home. So I think Arlington covers 3 points.
All right, let's look at the second game. And this is
it.
The main event of the weekend. St. Louis Battlehawks, the leader of the XFL division. Saturday, 4:00 on Fox, go on the road to take on the undisputed Birmingham Stallions, the leader of the USFL division. Birmingham, a 3.5-point home favorite over the St. Louis Battlehawks. This is the preview of the UFL championship game that we are going to get in a mere month and a half
this is
time.
The game. I can't
All right, Bill.
Game, but we're going to miss it, Ryan. That's the bad.
Oh, I swear to God. Listen, in all honesty, I would have missed it anyway because I was going to. Yeah, we need to record it and watch it because I would have missed the game anyway because I was going to go do an improv class on Saturday, like an improv comedy class on Saturday. And so I would have missed it all too. But now that I realized, we are going to miss it.
So those of you that don't know, the individual that stole my microphone, that it was here for the story at the beginning of the show, the individual that stole my microphone, her birthday happens to be May 11th. And we're going to be doing things to celebrate her birthday and decided to put the best game of the season on her birthday. It's a great birthday present for her, but she doesn't like football. So I will not be able to turn it on. However, I will record it and watch it on Sunday, Mother's Day.
Listen. She's your kid. She's just my friend. I'll turn it on my phone and I'll spoil it for you every step of the way. I'm like, hey, dude, hey, Ladies, what's that over there in the corner? Hey, Bill, check out the screen right here. Bill, Birmingham hosting St. Louis, 3.5-point favorite. Who you got?
Man, this one's really, really good. Birmingham, fantastic offense. I talked about it. They're 90 yards beyond beyond the next best team, which the next best team is actually Arlington. St. Louis, believe it or not, Ryan, is not the second or third best offense in the UFL. Believe it or not, they're the fourth best offense in the UFL. However, they're only 4 yards behind number 2 Arlington, so they're very good as well. But it's going to be excellent. It's going to be excellent. The thing is, it's the perfect clash of football teams. Birmingham likes to pass, correct? We've been watching those guys throw all over the field. I was correct when I quoted that St. Louis Battlehawks only allow 135 yards through the air. It's through the air. Total defense there at 222 yards. Through the air, they only allow 135 yards per game. Birmingham, they're going to try to shut them down. And man, oh man, is that going to be fun to watch. So that's a perfect setup for that game, I think. Make sure that St. Louis shuts down that offense. I cannot wait to watch the replay of this game on my record. Man, but I'm sorry. I have to take Birmingham is good. They're good. So I think they covered 3.5. I cannot wait to see what the final score is because I'll look at it before I watch it. But this can be a good game.
Birmingham has already secured their spot in the playoffs.
They're not resting people. They're not.
I'm not saying they're resting people, but I've got a feeling. I've just got this weird feeling that they're going to give Matt Corral a shot at this game, and it's going to be their undoing. Give me St. Louis at least to cover the spread. I don't know if they win, but this game is going to be closer than you think. Give me St. Louis to cover that 3.5-point spread. Next up, the first game on Sunday. It is a noon kickoff on ESPN. The Michigan Panthers travel to the DC Defenders. We just talked about it. Michigan sits at 4-2. The DC Defenders at 3-3. This is a must-win for the DC Defenders if they want a shot to take that number 2 spot in the XFL division. Bill, give me DC. I mean, it's basically a pick 'em here as a 1-point favorite. Give me DC to get the win. If it wasn't for the leg of Jake Bates kicking for 3 touchdowns last weekend on his own, they lose to Arlington. Give me DC to take this game, Bill. What say you?
Man, this one's tough. These are 2 very mediocre teams. They're very mediocre when it comes to statistics. DC does not like to play defense. They also don't like to play offense very much. Michigan statistically is a better team, Ryan. And I feel like the DC fans are a little bit disheartened about their DC team this season. Last season, they came out and supported that team. This past week, they did not have enough fans in the stands to bring the beer snake all the way to the top of the stands. I was a little bit disappointed. That's one of my favorite things about the UFL. But I think I'm going to roll with you, Ryan. I think the DC Defenders are starting to get their act together a little bit. And I'm not feeling Danny Etling. I think he plays okay, but I think EJ Perry with his scramble ability and his ability to run out of the pocket means more to this Michigan Panthers team. I think they're a little bit less dangerous without EJ Perry there. So I think I'll take DC with you on this one. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch.
All right, the final game of the weekend goes San Antonio, a 3-point road favorite at the Houston Roughnecks Sunday, a 3:00 kickoff on ESPN, immediately following the Michigan Panthers at the DC Defenders. Bill, what say you? I mean, we talked about the fact that San Antonio's got to have better quarterback play, but Houston's just not any good. What say you? Houston hosting the Brahmas.
Houston only has one thing that they can do, and 2. They can play defense pretty well. They're not terrible on defense. And Reed Sinnett, if he gets any kind of protection, is not a horrible quarterback, but they cannot run the football. On the other hand, San Antonio has been horrific on offense recently with Quentin Dormady at the helm. But I think this is going to have to be the Quentin Dormady comeback kid game and actually make something happen for the San Antonio Brahmas. He can't press, but he's got to make something happen. The Roughnecks might be able to shut them down. Honestly, give me Houston in this one. I think Houston is able to stop San Antonio because Dormady is playing so horrifically bad.
Listen, I like your optimism for Houston. I don't feel that way at all. I think San Antonio, it's hard to say that they cover 3, but I think they get the win here, even on the road, especially because now they're feeling the pressure from DC, and they're going to have to figure it out. So give me San Antonio to get the win here on the road this weekend. Bill, we've reached the end of the show, and the overtime segment here anything else you want to disclose? Anything else you want to say before we sign off for the evening?
Well, since we won't be able to talk to anybody this weekend, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, including my wife. And happy birthday to my daughter. I already said that, Saturday is her birthday, and thanks everybody for hanging out. It was kind of, fun having comments there for a bit. Everybody kind of tailed off when we started talking about the UFL, but going to be a fun weekend.
We're going to get everybody talking about the UFL at some point. I'm still arguing with people that think that it's not real football, and it's because they never watched it.
It's fantastic.
Listen, it's the same people that are talking about the AEW being garbage and they won't watch it, even though they're not wrong. But nevertheless, happy Mother's Day. Mom was in the chat earlier. Mama Frick, shout out to you guys earlier in the show. Shout out to Mom for being in here, and happy Mother's Day as well. Listen, I don't know what else much to say. You know what? I will give a shout out here. If you live in the Greenville, South Carolina area, I just discovered, because I'm dipping my foot into the water, so to speak, that Thursday nights at the Greenville Comedy Zone, they have open mic stand-up comedy starting at 8 p.m. Doors open at 7. I'm going to be attending tomorrow night. I don't think many people from Greenville watch the show, but I will be going to the Greenville Comedy Club tomorrow night, Thursday night, to check out open mic. And then at some point, I may get on stage. I might be terrible, but I might be great. And wouldn't you like to come and see and find out how good or bad that I am? So shout out to the Greenville Comedy Zone. Also, there's a place called the Coffee Underground in Greenville that does open mics on Monday. So the comedy scene in South Carolina in general isn't all that great. So I think the more that we can promote and get people interested and excited in it, that we might get to see some more growth here. So there's my little overtime segment. If you want to meet me, or if you want to see me on stage, come to the Comedy Zone at some point, because I will be on stage at some point there. But as far as this show goes, that's where we draw the line. This is where we end it. Make sure, if you haven't already, follow the show on Facebook, like and follow the page on Facebook, facebook.com/tapouts and touchdowns, on X at tapouts and TDs. And looking at who watched the show and where tonight, you can go to the show find the show on YouTube at tapouts and touchdowns. Next week's show will go up on YouTube, but it will not be live. It'll be a replay of the show on YouTube, because I will be going live on Instagram next week on my Instagram handle at Ryan W. Frick. So if you normally watch on YouTube, make sure you go and follow me on Instagram, because that is where we will be live on next week. We'll be live on Facebook, X, and Instagram next week, and the show replay will air on YouTube at a later time. But for everybody that was part of the show, everybody that joined us tonight, let's see. I think we got one more comment before we sign off here. We got Don Hula. Happy to be the sole viewer right now over on YouTube. So yeah, Don, make sure you go and follow the show on Facebook or Instagram. You can watch it live next week. Bill, what were you about to say to him?
Don is an S away from having the greatest name ever.
SOA.
An S, just an S.
An S. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right.
Dolphins
yes. Joke. Well, Don, I appreciate you watching the show live on YouTube. The show will be on YouTube next week. Like I said, it won't be live. Make sure you follow all the other socials to watch the show live next week. I don't know when we're going to have another wrestling show. I know the show is called Tap Outs and Touchdowns, but life gets busy and it's hard to get to it. I don't want to say it's the dead time, because it's actually a pretty exciting time in wrestling. So I'll tell you as we close the show, if you're not watching wrestling, I suggest to do it, because there's a lot of fun stuff coming. Monday Night Raw will be in Greenville on Monday. I cannot go to that either, so that's fun. But a lot of good wrestling stuff. But like I said, new football show next week. Thanks to everybody who joined the show wherever you watched. If you left a comment, appreciate you being part of the show. And join us next week for Banker Bill. It's your guy, Bully Rye, and we'll see you next time right here on Tap Outs and Touchdowns.